list 2, Electric Boogaloo. So if you're coming over from my Alpha Legion list, you know I'm creating a lot of starter lists to kind of see what this game will look like when people start playing it and give some experimental lists out there that are a lot of fun. And for this one, I'm doing Emperor's Children. However, there are a couple caveats I want to give to this one in terms of how I made this list that I didn't do for the previous list. The last list I made for Alpha Legion was kind of looking at some components of the starter box and sprinkling a few additions in there, such as a Thunderhawk. For this one, I didn't assume any limitations like that. I did try to incorporate ideas in terms of unit sizes for what you would generally have, but I kind of threw that out the window at first and said, you know what, let's just see kind of to the extreme what we can make this list for the idea that I had. The second caveat I want to give is that this isn't necessarily meant to be the most competitive idea. This is an interesting list I put together that I'm sure can be sort of shaped up and improved in a few different areas, but it's an interesting concept I wanted to go ahead and put out there. The third caveat I should put in is that there are a few units that I will be using in this list that, while their profiles are available at the moment, their actual models are not. So if you want to use this list, maybe proxy in these early days to kind of see how it performs before these models come out. It's only 2 that you need to worry about, and they're just Bastion batteries, which we'll cover in a moment. So with Emperor's Children, their special ability is the ability to just one turn say they win the initiative. They don't have to roll for it. They just once per battle are able to be like, I have initiative this turn. And we are going to make the most use of that. Well, I think most people see that and go, okay, this is great situationally because when I really, really need it, I have that option. But what if we make a list that utilizes and exploits it immediately? So to do that, I actually made this list a little bit in reverse of how I would normal lists because I started with the allies first. So this is a 1500 point list, which means we get 450 points worth of Solar Auxilia allies that we're going to be utilizing. Spoiler alert, there are not going to be any Titans in this. We are going to try and make some unit decisions to compensate for that, compensate for not having our big unit on the field to maybe counter their Titan, but you'll see that in a moment. The reason I started with allies first is I felt there was one detachment in particular for the Solar Auxilia that could really exploit the Emperor's Children special rule in a positive way. That would be the Solar Auxilia Pioneer Company. The reason I think this is perfect is because every infantry unit in the Auxilia Pioneer Company gets Infiltrate, which is really big, especially because some of these units are stupid good at close combat, and the core detachment for it must be a Velatar Storm section, which normally you wouldn't be using. You'd be using a Las Rifle Tercio, but in the Pioneer Company, you have to use a Storm section, which is good because we already want to be using them. Some of you may be confused if you haven't watched any battle reports and you're wondering why I'm saying these guys are so good at melee compared to Marines. And it's because a lot of the Solar Auxilia units actually have Rend, which means they get an extra die to add into their melee sort of fight value. Additionally to that, they're not that far off from combat bonus compared to Marines, and in the case of things like Ogryns, they're actually on par, if not better in some cases. The Ogryns have Furious Charge and do have a combat factor of 3+ already, meaning when they charge, they're getting 5+ and throwing 3 dice at it. It's kind of insane. And because they count as infantry, we can infiltrate with them in the Venatari detachment. So the general idea here is we go like this. We take a Legate Commander detachment, and specifically the Legate Commander for a couple reasons. One, they have a larger aura for their command structure. 2, they have Master Technician, which is going to be quite important for the flexibility of this strategy. We then fill out the Bastion compulsory detachments with Auxilia Rapier batteries. These are 50 points each. These are the 2 things I said that haven't been released yet, so honestly, take a look at what they look like in the art they release and just find something to proxy with them. Or if you're watching this video after they've released, try these out. I mean, are they any good? We're gonna be interested to see how things shake up. But you get 3 per, you get a defensive position with them. You know, they're decent, but they're not really important for the actual strategy. They're just baked into the list because they have to be. Then your core is your Storm section, which you are going to max out to 8 bases for a total of 60 points. These guys, while not as good as Ogryns, still have the Rend special rule, and with their army faction ability, are going to have a combat factor of +2 already, so they're going to be quite good. Then going down to support and optional slots, we're going to take another core unit. Our only option here is the las rifle tercios, but we're going to fill it up with the optional attachments it can take, putting in 6 of the storm section and 6 different Ogren upgrades, or Ogren bases, pardon. This means you have a total of 16 bases, only 4 of which are the actual tercios, another 12 of which are melee-centric auxilia. Then we fill out the support detachment with a full unit of Ogren, just absolutely full brick for 80 points, and then you fill out both of your vanguards with a single minimum size Auxilia Aethon Heavy Sentinel Patrol. They have forward deployment so you can move up a bit with them and kind of also take advantage of this strategy. The general idea here is with Infiltrate, we deploy these 3 incredibly heavy melee-centric units right on our opponent's line after they've deployed, singling out targets we want to use. But it's very important how we do it. You are first going to deploy your Ogren against the thing you want to die immediately because of their furious charge, and you're going to take first turn, and you're going to charge. You then have 2 dedicated melee units, one of which you are also going to get in the melee. The reason being is your opponent will have time to move something away, but not both things if you've lined up correctly. So one of your units may not get into combat, but if you line up correctly and kind of make it to where you have multiple options with all of this, you can get all 3 of these into melee. However, if that is not the case, it is important for this reason to take the Legate Commander detachment. He will be giving a new order to whoever isn't getting the charge off. This is perhaps the only reason you would consider changing up this las rifle tercio unit I've put in and maybe adding in flamers instead of all this melee. The logic behind this is that you set the commander's unit up kind of close for a charge. He would be in the storm section, right? And so you guarantee based on their position that it is going to charge something. However, you can't guarantee that this 3rd unit will, so with the Legate in the back, you charge forward and you change the order of this squadron to be in advance, so perhaps they can shoot. There are a few different remixes of that strategy, a few different considerations, but this is the general idea. You can kind of tailor the singular optional core detachment with that in mind, or ignore that and just go for it, go for broke. All in all, this is a 437 point detachment, so it's coming in just under the 450 point limit we have at this point value. And then we can take a look at the rest of our Emperor's Children and see how do we take advantage of immediately shoving in the opponent, trying to knock out some key units with our Auxilia, moving up with forward deployment, and ultimately gaining greater initiative because they are having to play very reactionary, while as we can be the one determining our own decisions and sort of delaying their moves. Now again, I mentioned we're not going to have a Warhound Titan or anything like that. In fact, we only have one primary formation, which means we're limited to one allied formation, the Auxilia we're already running. So unless we switched up the list quite a bit, we don't have the option to even run a Warhound Titan at the moment, or any other kind of Titan, or any other allied formation, really. The reason we only have one is since we only have about 1,050 points left to us, we don't want to spread our compulsory units out too much because then we're diminishing the effect of larger units that we can actually make significant use of. Additionally, we don't have a faction ability that's really caring too much about our formation sizes. Again, with Alpha Legion, we saw that we want to be maybe making use of many smaller formations, or something like Ultramarines wants to be making use of bigger formations. With this one though, something we want to keep in mind is we don't want to dilute our forces too much, not only because of the efficiency of the units we're building, but also because we don't want them to break too easily. Formations break based on how many units are lost within them, and so if we have one larger centralized formation, not only can we maximize the usage of those particular units for our purposes, we don't have as much of a risk of the formation breaking early as the game goes along. So let's take a look at what we have here, starting with our compulsory slots. Again, we have a Legion Command, just standard. That's going to be with a core of 2 different Legionnaire squads, both with 10 bases. Both are going to receive 1 extra Legionnaire upgrade for 2 bases, and both are going to receive 2 Plasma Legionnaire upgrades for 4 bases, making them a total of 10. And making them a very decent anti-infantry choice, but also giving them light AT at 10 inches. And that's a distance they're going to be able to cover, because I'm going to just go ahead and skip ahead and say we are going to give them both 5 rhinos to transport those units. 5 of them are going to have multi-meltas, and 5 of them are going to have havoc launchers. This is going to allow us to make ample use of not only our initiative, but also the fact that we're sort of crowding our opponent into their deployment zone with some heavy melee units by using that speed to move up on the first turn and really take the midfield, both with a heavy vehicle presence and a heavy infantry presence. We are then going to double down on this idea by using the compulsory support detachment to add in a full 8 base assault squad that's able to fly across the board as much as we can. And we're actually going to add in a second full support squad in one of the optional slots, both coming in at 54 points, 8 bases, all infantry able to spread out and respond to whoever gets away from our main infantry punch in the middle. At this size, these assault marines are also quite good at melee, quite good at getting out garrison troops because jump pack units get a bonus to that. So they are quite competent at sort of engaging at close range, which again, we want to be at that close range. There is a con to this that we'll talk about in a little bit, but we're going to keep moving for now. In the other optional support detachment, we're going to go ahead and throw in a Legion Terminator squad because just having a deep striking unit always is nice in games, especially that have secondary objectives, which this one does. So having that is just going to be useful, and Terminators are cool. In the final optional core slot, we're also going to go ahead and throw in another tactical squad, but deck it out with 4 extra bases of missile launchers to give us some more long-range AT where needed. Now, the main AT, the main punch of this army, is going to come from the heavy armor. If you go to the Legion Demi Company, you're able to choose one of the following: battle tank, heavy armor, or artillery. And we're going to lean into the heavy armor by bringing 6 Kratos tanks. These things are very hard to kill and they pack a hell of a punch, so being able to make use of our first turn and again move up into a position and being able to dictate the flow of the battle, where they're aiming, their sight lines, understanding that we have control of that first move is going to be really beneficial for this very heavy armor presence that can take down an enemy Titan, that can take down enemy armor very efficiently, and is very hard to kill in return. So we're going to spend 350 points to give ourselves a very good tank detachment because we don't have a lot more in terms of large vehicles besides that. This list is incredibly aggressive because all of it is intent on getting up the board as quick as possible, making use of the distraction, and its infiltrators are on the line, something that I don't necessarily recommend with, say, Alpha Legion. That one you want to be more opportunistic in your placement. This one you want to be as close as possible. Anyone running any kind of aerial transport or outflanking list is going to have an advantage on you, particularly the aerial transport, because they're just going to go over you. You have enough speed in this list to kind of deal with the outflankers. For dealing with the aerial transports, however, I recommend for the final 180 points, something that is going to not only deal with that very efficiently, but is also going to give you some actually really decent anti-tank that you need while still being very survivable. And that is a single detachment of 2 Xiphon interceptors, which will come in at 180 points. When these 2 are together, they will be shooting 8 rounds. If it's at a flyer, they will be re-rolling everything because their main gun is accurate and their secondary gun has tracking. They hit on 4s and they're no slouch either. These can take out Lehman Russ attachments, these can take out, you know, a Thunderhawk if it just fails 2 saves. All of its guns are AP-1, so it's incredibly possible with 8 shots hitting on 4s, re-rolling. So that is how we're going to round it out. That's how we're going to kind of cover our ass a bit. And ultimately, again, is it very competitive? Probably not. Is it really funny and is going to be a very immediately an engaging game, high proximity, high amount of mobility, a high amount of, oh my god, what do I do, being experienced by your opponent? Let me know what you think and let me know what tweaks you would make, because I think there's quite a few options in a list like this, but I think the Auxilia Pioneer Company mixed with this idea of taking that first turn, guaranteeing it, is a really interesting concept that really plays into the immediate rewards you can get for utilizing something like that right off the bat. It does have the downside as you might run out of steam because you don't have a persistent ability that you're relying on and your one ability you're using immediately. Show me your tweaks, show me what you would recommend, show me what you swap out, and I'll see y'all for the next Legion video. See ya.